Hello and welcome to the Hollywood Critics Association's Foundation After Show. Each week on this show, we discuss the latest episode of the Apple TV Plus series based on the beloved science fiction novels of the same name by author Isaac Asimov. I'm Jami Philbrick, entertainment journalist and critic for We Live Entertainment and a member of the Hollywood Critics Association. We have a great show for you tonight. We will be having a spoiler-filled discussion of the final episode of the first season of the Foundation, which just dropped tonight and is entitled The Leap. So, as always, I am joined by Nikki Fowler, and back this week, Yael Tygiel. Hey guys, how are you?
Hello.
Hey, Jamie.
Are you guys excited to discuss the final episode of the series that we've been talking about for weeks?
Absolutely. It was such a great finale. So excited.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into it. Let's go, and I will do a quick recap of this episode. So, as we saw at the end of last week's episode, Harry's, we'll call it his ghost, appears out of the vault and explains his true plan finally to everyone, which was not to gather knowledge, but instead gather people. He encourages the Anacreons and the people of Thespis to come together along with the Foundation and use the Invictus to fight the Empire. He also reveals to Salvor that she was not part of his plan and that he has not been sending her visions. She soon discovers that Gail and Raish are her real parents. Points for Nikki Fowler. And who have been sending her visions. On the verge of becoming mayor, Salvor leaves to find Gail, and we flash forward 138 years where we see Gail land on her home planet and find Salvor. Meanwhile, Day has a heart-to-heart with Dawn and takes his revenge on Dawn's girlfriend. But against his wishes, Demmerzelle kills Dawn. Finally, Day learns that the entire clone bloodline has been infected with imperfection and that even himself and Dusk could be imperfect. Wow, that was a lot. I love this episode because it really gave it to us, right? It answered almost all the questions. I mean, maybe we'd have a few more questions we could come up with, I'm sure, the three of us. But I mean, I felt like the basic questions of the series or of the first season of the series, I should say, were answered in this episode. And I found it very satisfying and very rewarding after 9 previous episodes. I love a series that actually gives you the answers to the questions they've set up. Unlike some series that just let it drag on and on and on. But let's start, Nikki, let me start with you. Just what are your basic feelings, thoughts on this episode? What transpired, what concluded, and then we'll kind of, we'll go to Yael and then sort of deep dive into some of the specific issues.
Yeah. First, I want to point out that Yael, I believe you kind of predicted in the very first episode of our show, or second, that that the parent, when Salvor was introduced, that she could be have the parents of, Gail and Raish being her parents. I don't know if you remember that, but
that was me. I thought that was you.
Oh no, I've said it, but I think Yael said it.
Yeah, I said it.
Yeah. And then the parents were revealed and you were like, I'm glad I was wrong. But yeah, good point on that, Yael. But yeah, this was just a great episode. And I feel that Asimov's work is so broad that, I just expected to get answers in a finale because there's just so much information and so much more to come. So I'm just glad that they ended with a lot of information, a lot of reveals. I love the idea of Selden's casket and the vault. That whole dynamic was super, great sci-fi. I just loved it. And also, the reveal of Salvor's parents and Salvor reuniting with Gail, and again, the Hugo Salvor relationship. We got one more juicy tidbit of them coming together to go apart again. So I'm here for all of that little relationship, not drama, but I'm just here for it. And then this intense scene with Azura and Brother Day. I mean, that was just phenomenal, and didn't expect that. And, you know, she's basically going to be tortured for the rest of her quote unquote life. So that was really intense. And I really enjoyed like every aspect of this episode.
Yeah, totally agree. That scene was bonkers. Like the way he sort of systematically kind of broke her down was great. And I also loved the scene with Hugo and Salvor, like, you know, very tender moment. I enjoyed that as well. And I'll say on another point that you just made, Nikki, you know, Asimov's material certainly is there to have all the conclusions, but kudos to the showrunners and the producers and Apple TV for really not stretching out a lot of stuff over several seasons and really giving the answers in a condensed way in the first season. And as we know, there are questions that are left at the end for a second season as well, but it just feels very satisfying the way they did it. Yael, what were your thoughts on this episode?
Honestly, I am torn. There are some parts that I love, some parts that I'm very angry about. So like, yes, I love being right. I like that I'm right that Salvor and Gail were related. I love that I called it. I love that the tiny little scene about the embryos and the reproductive discussion. It was a very small scene one time. And I remember being like, this seems odd. And I see people who are in our audience commenting, like, have you forgotten about this one scene? And I think the show wanted us to forget so that it was a big surprising reveal. But then it wasn't a big surprising reveal because, you know, I called it. So I love that I was right, but I don't like that I called it. It was not a big surprising reveal to me. I will say, the vault being actually like a tomb and then bringing out his hologram. I loved that. I think that was a really fun twist and a really fun surprise. That said, things that he said really annoyed me. So him saying that the foundation was never a curation of knowledge, it was about curating people. And if I understood from everyone else, the whole point of the books is that it was about curating knowledge. So I think that seems very odd to me. And then he also says this isn't the first crisis. As a response to "Will we see you again?" he says this isn't the Foundation's first crisis, and it won't be the last. But everyone else is like, this is the first crisis. So I'm a little confused right there. That said, I agree with Nikki. The situation with Azura, the description of her punishment was vicious. What is going to happen to her is just so evil, and I think that's so in character with Empire. These clones are pretty bad, and so I love the way that they decide that they're going to punish her. I think this episode, again, some things made me very excited and some things really did not.
Yeah, that's really interesting. All the things you just had to say. I kind of do agree in the sense, like, with the Salvor being Ration Gale's offspring. Yeah, I think it had to happen, like, in order for everything to sort of make sense that had been set up, that had to happen. But I also agree that it did seem a little anticlimactic because we kind of had thought maybe that was, I was hoping for something like a completely different direction that would explain it, that we weren't, thinking ahead of time. And then the other thing, when Selden said that it wasn't the first crisis, I took that more as like crisis in the term of like something that this group had to overcome, as opposed to being like the first crisis, which was the name of that episode. So I do feel like that was the first, crisis in the sense of the, major things that they'll have to overcome.
That we're waiting for.
Right. But not necessarily like we've overcome other things. I mean, that's the way I took it. Maybe that's an incorrect interpretation. But
No,
that
I
was sort
like
of the way I took it.
I think that's a really great way to look at it because I like went back and rewatched it to be like, wait, so this isn't it? But I get what you're saying.
Because he's inspiring them, right? Like he's giving the big, I mean, I would have to think that part of the plan, because let's remember, and it's hard for me to remember because Jared Harris is standing right there. He's dead. That character is not physically alive. And so that computer hologram was programmed to give an inspirational speech. That's sort of the way that I saw that systematically or mathematically or however he uses his equations, realized that at that moment they were gonna need a pick me up, right? And so that's the way I sort of saw it. But I don't know. Sometimes I just don't know. Nikki, what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I'm not following your version. Can you just explain that one more time? As far as the crisis.
Well, yeah. He says that this isn't the first crisis but the name of the episode is The First Crisis, and we were led to.
This episode is The Leap.
No. But I'm saying a couple episodes ago, and so which would indicate that it was the first crisis, right? And so, but I think that what he meant by this isn't the first crisis we've had to go through. I think he was using the term crisis in more of a overall umbrella term. Like we've had to overcome other obstacles, like just getting here was, you know what I mean? But as far as sort of, I'll put in the terms of like Asimov's crisis in the book for the Foundation. I do think that was the first one with Invictus.
So the first crisis is kind of ending now in this episode. But yeah, I get what you're saying. The way he said it. So there's multiple that are going to happen. But I get what you're saying. So it can be a little confusing, but yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot to try to pick apart there. Well, since we're talking about everything that sort of went on with Harry and the vault there on Terminus, let's get into my favorite question on this show, Harry's plan. I mean, I think we pretty much know at least what it is up to this point that the first season ends, right? So were you surprised by any of it? Were you thrown off when he sort of reveals everything to Salvor and the fact that she wasn't part of the plan and that he actually, the hologram seems surprised at what took place? Nikki, why don't you give your thoughts on that?
I was, I feel that this is all still part of his plan. The basis for the books, and Asimov's work is found, empires rising and falling, and not so much the information with the Foundation. As you can see, he lied. He's basically saying he was not being completely honest with them. His goal is to, continue civilization outside of this imperial empire, I would believe. And so his plan is working. Now, I don't know if I believe him when he's saying he doesn't know, have anything to do with what happened with Salvor and her visions, and if she's part of the plan, because he kind of, gives information when he wants to. So we just don't know. And I like that suspense of still not knowing how Salvor factors into this. And that's really something great to take into the next season, which will bring me back, to want to watch it. But I feel it's all part of his plan. So I still feel it's, on track, and he knows more than he's letting on to.
Yeah, Salvor is definitely a loose cannon in all of this. Two things, Yael. One, can we even trust a thing Harry's hologram says, because we know that he's lied throughout this whole thing? What are your thoughts on that?
I think we can trust so much as I think this is his plan. I think his plan was to lie to them, to get them all to this point. And I think that makes sense. I do think that his surprise at Salvor is consistent, especially because Gale and Raish were never supposed to get together. So like he really did not think that was going to happen. And so therefore this offspring shouldn't exist. And so I really like that part of it. I think the fact that he lied to everybody feels so on brand. And we've known from the beginning, right? Like in the original trial, he is manipulating it to get exiled because he knew that that would be where we'd end up. I think my biggest issue is when he gives us this history lesson about the Anacreons and the Thespians and how the Empire caused their rift. I think that was fascinating. I kind of would have enjoyed understanding any of that history before the final episode. I think that would have been very, very useful because he showed up in the last episode to go, hey, let me give you context for everything. So that was a little annoying, but otherwise I really enjoyed, it made perfect sense. I understood the story, and I think that we're all on track for his plan, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Nikki, let me ask you this, because it seems that in regards to Salvor being Gail and Raish's daughter, it seems that the one thing Harry didn't plan for was love, right? Like he couldn't, his mathematical, theories could not discover that. And then also, like, is it too much of a coincidence for you to, buy that she's their daughter? Like, it is very convenient to sort of wrap up this whole series and this whole first season. And I'm willing to go with it, but it feels a little convenient for me. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Well, first off, I feel that, a lot of Gail's messages that she was sending in the narration was on giving information, revealing information, and just how information shapes society. And, that's on brand with Selden on we withhold things, that we don't want people to know. And it's this form of manipulating society. So I love that aspect. So I just, in my mind, I still don't know if, like I said before, I mean, it's very, I don't know. It seems obvious that he didn't know about Salvor, but I feel that there's more to it that, I'm not ruling out that he didn't bank on that. Even bringing, I'm not banked on that yet. So, but I see how it's convenient, but I still think it's interesting. It's very interesting. So.
Yeah. Yael, convenient was that a little bit maybe of the issue you were getting at with that relationship? Was it just too like, oh, of course?
I think, I don't know that convenience was my issue. But I think that it does make sense that he wouldn't account for love, right? There are tons of, sci-fi stories where like the big problem is they didn't see love coming, or they didn't account for love, or somebody becomes evil and then the thing that breaks them is love, and they come back and you're like, how could that have foiled it? So I think that being a theme is really interesting, but I think the show has chosen to just kind of ignore that is a theme, if that makes sense. Like, this is a big thing that he didn't account for, but we're not going to talk about the fact that his math couldn't see love. I think that's really weird.
Yeah, I agree with that. But to be fair to the showrunners and to the creators of the show, possibly that's something that they could kind of get into in the second season. So,
sure.
How did he not see this coming? How did he, that kind of thing. So that'd be interesting. Of course, the big moment at the end of the episode is the flash forward. I want to save that for a minute and talk about what was going on with the Empire, and then we'll end on that note. But I mean, we talked about it a little bit, that scene with Day and Dawn's love interest was just frightening, right? I mean, how good was Lee Pace in that scene? And then, of course, Demmerzelle, and then the reveal of the imperfection in the clones. So I'm just going to throw all of that at you guys right now. Nikki, let me start with you, just about sort of the whole Empire side of this episode.
Just super interesting. I've always been fascinated with Demmerzelle and where her loyalty lies. And, we see her in one moment rubbing on her salt bracelet at the end when, she ends up actually killing brother Dawn. So, and then revealing, this, actually pulling off her flesh to reveal what looks like, I guess she's a robot, to allude to the, robot aspect of Asimov's work. So it's really interesting, just the whole breakdown. And then also with Brother Day, basically having this change of thought. And, after going on the spiral, maybe, we kind of see that he obviously learned a little of something. And he's having this change of heart. So just really interesting. So curious, obviously, to know what part Demmerzelle's playing in all of this. Was she behind Brother Don's imperfections, and also him getting, kidnapped? I don't know. So there's something there, though. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think the question for me is with Demmerzelle, did she kill Dawn out of loyalty to the Empire because that is what would have been best for the Empire? Or did she use that as a cloak for some other reason why she did it? And then you're absolutely right. Pulling off her skin at the end, is she saying, I'm done pretending I'm a human, I'm a robot, I'm going to just be robot? And could this bring in some element of the robot wars that we've heard about in the past? Maybe they're kind of moving that to a different part in the timeline in the series. Yael, what were your thoughts on sort of the Empire side of things and this whole, like, really leaving the current day with the thought of that he and Dawn and Dusk may not be perfection either, and where do we go from there?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. The beginning of the episode, I was like, we've dealt with it. Like, last episode was really exciting about this, and I'm done. And then it brought me back in. So kudos to the writers, because the idea that Don was so corrupted, he was so imperfect, and then having to see Day decide, you know what, I've learned we need to adapt and maybe this is okay. And then I took Demmerzelle's decision to kill Dawn as her programming, right? Like, she needs to protect the Empire. And so far, from what we've seen of these three at that moment, Dusk was the only one who was the Empire, right? Day was thinking about accepting a corrupted clone, and Dawn was a corrupted clone. So at that point, the only thing for her to do, it seemed, was to protect Dusk's vision, which was to kill Dawn. And I took her frustration and how she reacted as the like tearing inside her. She loved this child. She loves all of them. But her programming made her do it. And I think that is, she was torn, her heart was torn. And so she reflected that by tearing off her own face.
Yeah, it absolutely could have been that. It was some sort of rejection, whether it was a rejection of who she had been pretending to be, who she really was, who the Empire wanted her to be. Hopefully those are threads that we'll get to explore a little bit in the next season. Well, finally, let's just talk about that sort of final moment, this flash forward. I'll set it up a little bit. We mentioned it before, on the verge of sort of becoming mayor, which we knew was her destiny for Salvor on Terminus. She realizes she has to leave, go and try to find Gail. Gail needs her help, says goodbye to Hugo, and we see her go off. And we had seen in a previous episode, of course, Gail decide to transport herself back to her home planet. And so we flash forward, I think it was like 138 years, and actually finally see Gail arriving on her planet. She's in the sort of the sleeping state, I'll call it that, and wakes up and then discovers that Salvor is already there. So that's an interesting kind of time jump there. The show plays fast and loose with that. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then of course that they meet for a moment, and then that's the season. So I think this whole season set up them meeting, right? Whether they're daughter and mother or not, like those two characters, they're our main characters. They are our hero characters. They needed to come together at some point. So I felt satisfied in that sense. It just brings up a whole lot of questions. I mean, is it really 138 years later for Salvor? Like that means Hugo and everyone are dead, right? Well, Hugo's got some weird, he can kind of live forever, can't he? So maybe he'll still be around somewhere, but that's a long time. So Nikki, let's start with you. What were your thoughts on the finale, the sort of the final moments, and where does this lead us for season 2?
Yeah, the idea of this being 135 or 38 years into the future, we saw that the Anacreons and people of Thespis are coming together, and they're doing what Selden instructed them to do, which is just to build and to grow and to get the Invictus. So it'll be really interesting to see Salvor and Gale, however they, come together, possibly reuniting with this foundation, or I don't know if they'll be, they'll go on to the second foundation, but it'll just be interesting to see that dynamic if they all do come together for season 2. But I love the whole, story of, Gale returning to Synax and, just floating there with beautiful visuals and actually the animals, basically the sea life, kind of alluding to someone being down there, that whole scene of her going down. It was really beautiful. And it was a great finale. It was a great final scene, and just seeing the two of them meet. So I think, definitely big things ahead for the two of them, and with the building up of the original foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yael, what were your thoughts on that final moment? Where do you see it going in a possible season 2? And if for some reason there's not a season 2, is this a satisfying conclusion to the series?
Well, I'll start with that. No, if there's no season 2, that was 100% not a satisfying conclusion. No, you've set up these two people. They finally met. No, that's not a great conclusion. But I will say the idea of them being so far in the future is interesting, specifically because Gale knew that she was going back to her home planet and it would take 138 years or however many. And she got there and kind of seemed disappointed that there was no one there, or that even if there was someone there, that she would know them. Girl, it's been 138 years. No, you're not going to know anybody. Your parents are gone. So I think that was an interesting choice, that she chose to go home rather than to a planet where she knows there are people. But I think seeing Salvor there, now they have each other. So that's nice. And in season 2, I'm excited to see what that looks like and where that goes. As for Hugo, I just want to throw out that the reason he lived so long is because he kept being in pods like these, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
like
okay.
He traveled a lot, and so would end up being in these pods, and that's why he didn't age. And so in theory, he could still be around, but the people of the planet probably aren't. Like the people that Salvor knew are probably not around. Her parents are probably not around. So I think that's really interesting. I don't know where it could go, but to see them together would be great, because now we've got two very special, gifted people who are very smart, that can do a lot of cool things. And I would love to see what that leads to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a really cool show. I liked it a lot. And so I would love to see a second season, especially with everything that they've set up, and see kind of where, they're able to take it and where it goes from there. But this has been so much fun talking about this show with you guys every week for the last, 2 months we've been doing this. We want to thank everyone for watching. That is it. That is the final episode of the HCA's Foundation After Show. Please hit the subscribe button, subscribe to the HCA channel. We have so many other cool shows and really cool after shows coming up for some new shows that will be airing soon. So check those out. Thank you so much for watching us, those of you who have been with us all these weeks. Nikki, thank you. It's been a pleasure to get to do this with you. Let everyone know where they can check you out.
Yes, everyone can find me on social media everywhere at Nikki Fowler 28 or at Glitter Magazine.
Awesome. And Yael, it's been awesome getting to talk to you about super nerdy stuff every week. Tell everyone where they can check your stuff out.
Yeah, I am everywhere on the internet at Yael Tygiel. That is YaelTygiel. You can find me on the Hollywood Critics Association channel on Hollywood Approved. We're taking a little winter hiatus, but all of our episodes are available now. And for anything else, just find me on social and ask.
Awesome. And I'm Jami Philbrick. You can check me out, Twitter, Instagram at Philbrock. My name on Facebook. Also, I host HCA Pop Council podcast every Monday morning at 11 a.m. That's where you can find me. And hopefully we'll see you again next season for another round of the Foundation. Until then, thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.